Hey, thanks for joining us. And today, all right, Julio Guzman, who is the chairman of the South Dade Chambers here.
Good morning.
And you're going to be heading up our show here today. Our guest today, of course, is Steve Losner, the mayor of Homestead.
Absolutely. Good to have you, Mr. Losner.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I've been waiting. I watch you here. It seems like every other week you're on.
Yeah, this show is good. It's great.
We like it when the South Dade Chamber has really been instrumental on us reaching out to other Chamber of Commerces. Right, when Ms. Black was here, she dragged everybody up here, and week after week after week after week, all through the pandemic. And we know she's moving or have moved.
Yeah.
So my hats off to her and the members and the city for making all that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Carrie Black has been instrumental. This show has been great for the Chamber of Commerce. We like to highlight our members. We like to highlight our trustees. Thank you to the great staff that we have over at the Chamber. There's a lot of great things happening in Deep South Dade, and we are glad that we can continue this conversation with Mayor Losner, and he can tell us a little bit about what's going on deep in South Dade. Sure. So if I will, Mayor Losner, one of the big things happening in South Dade and throughout this pandemic is the agricultural business has suffered tremendously with all that has happened. Where do you see the agricultural business? How do you think they could move forward, and what are some of the ways you think some relief can be provided to the agricultural business?
Well, let's not kid ourselves. The agricultural industry in Deep South Dade was hurting long before the advent of the pandemic. You know, we can talk NAFTA, we can talk local regulation, uneven playing field. And the impact of the pandemic was that their produce that would normally go out into, throughout the country to restaurants, in fast food, you're growing lettuce, tomatoes, whatever, going on a hamburger somewhere in a fast food joint. That market collapsed virtually overnight. Of course, there were some folks who were concerned about where their next dollar was going to come from to go to the grocery store. So the pandemic was an end user issue. Now, many of the larger agricultural interests in South Dade kind of thought quickly, retooled, and began doing direct bulk sales to the community. You may have remembered out at Sam Accursio's packing house. He partnered with several other farmers and even those out of our immediate area that needed an outlet for blueberries, for example. And they were very nimble, very quick, retooled and got that produce out into the community. And I wouldn't say it bailed out their season, but kept them from completely going underwater. And the real heartening part of that is that, I know for myself and many, many others, they were buying because it was a really good price and passing it along to those in need.
I see.
I mean, how many families need a whole box of beans or corn or tomatoes or, flat of blueberries at one time. So I know that was very helpful. Now, for the bigger picture, what I've seen, and I see it, from, my practice and just observation, is that while there are still some of the traditional row crop farmers, the green beans, tomatoes, squash, zucchini, a little bit of summertime okra, we're seeing niches arise. A lot of the Asian type vegetables, herbs, lychees, longans, dragon fruit. And again, they were impacted by the pandemic as well.
So you're saying that you've noticed some of the more traditional type of crops, the farmers have pivoted and started to change the type of crops they want to grow.
No, I'm saying that others are coming in and replacing the traditional row crops. As those farmers are aging out, throwing in the towel, tired of having red ink every year, there are other less traditional forms of South Dade agriculture coming in. They were hurt by the pandemic as well. Certainly we see things opening up now, and there will be the demand for that specialty type of of product.
Got it.
Certainly the, plant nurseries, tree farms, as housing is again booming, they can't produce and ship ornamental landscape products quickly enough.
Generically, lots of folks that are north of the Homestead area, I want to remind people there's the city of Homestead, then there's Homestead, the greater Homestead area, which is part of Miami-Dade County, and then there's this term Redland, Redland, all right? Not Redlands, Redland, all right?
Some of us natives call it Redlands, plural.
Well,
and we get scolded by some of the purists.
So part of it, so the government of Homestead works directly with the people that are in the city of Homestead, but yet highly influential for the surrounding areas. So some of those farms are in that area.
Most of the large farming areas are adjacent to, but outside the city limits of both Homestead and Florida City.
And Mayor, you brought up, some of the farmers are aging out, right? So what happens when they age out and they're 80 years old and they don't want to farm anymore? You have the kids, or you have other farmers that are going in there? Well,
unfortunately, we're seeing now that those 80-year-old farmers in your example have 55-year-old kids who have been in the family business and, again, tired of seeing that red ink, fighting the bureaucracy, and it's time to move on. So we're not seeing, except in very limited examples, second and third generations of families continuing the business. So it's a new group, a new type of farming coming in.
Well, Julio knows well that third generation anything is about 5 or 6%. All right. And so, Julio, what's going to happen with the South Dade Chamber's position on agricultural?
Well, the South Dade Chamber has always advocated to shop local. That's one of our key components of what makes the South Dade Chamber great, because we're always advocating for people to shop local. So if you think of this on a bigger scale, if we are in an agricultural area that could potentially feed a large part of this country, why don't we start here to, try to encourage cruise lines, school board, a lot of the big players here, why don't they shop local and buy produce from the growers that are growing the food here? I think it comes down to dollars and cents, whatever is the least expensive route, that's the route they take. But I think it would, and we've tried to champion that with the former Mayor Jimenez, who's now a congressman. We started that conversation, and then pandemic hit and cruise lines stopped. But we were pushing towards getting the cruise lines to at least start buying their produce here in South Dade, which I think that was a great thing for agriculture.
And you mentioned about the school board,
right?
Miami-Dade County School Board.
Correct.
So we want them to buy more local.
We would like
whether they're from the new farmers or the old farmers.
Either way.
And so in the past couple of years, the state says we want to improve the agricultural experience and permitting events on farmlands, as long as there's there's some key elements in there. So maybe Julio, you could tell us about some of the events that are being held on formerly just nursery plant nurseries.
Well, as I've mentioned in previous shows, the Redlands have beautiful venues out there where people are coming down to get married, to have events, to have quinceañera, to have graduations, and all of these really unique properties. They're beautiful, and when you get out there, these owners, they spend a tremendous amount of money, with their attention to detail to make that experience great for whoever's coming to get married. So those are some of the things that are happening in South Dade. And just reverting back to the agricultural business, just last week at Rotary Club, we saw a traditional farm had converted completely over to hemp. So they are growing hemp because, Florida, South Florida especially, has a great environment to grow hemp year round, where you can't do it.
Hemp looks like marijuana, but there's no get high element.
Correct.
The very low THC component.
Right. And that is a booming business. It's still in the early stages, but it seems like it's starting to penetrate, especially in the agricultural area down here in South Dade, where people can, can kind of convert their entire operation to hemp, because that market is starting to become a little lucrative.
But remember, that was a farming family who owned their own land.
Okay.
Part of the issue is that many of the traditional row crop farmers, most of whom no longer exist, always rented their land.
Okay.
I mean, we were so remote and land values were on the low end out of whack with the rest of the county.
Right.
No one ever envisioned that, hey, you need to own your own land.
Right.
But,
right.
You know, to your point, that is, you know, another one of those niches and an evolution that if we can't make money
right
with our land doing traditional row
tomatoes
crops or avocados, whatever it is, we're going to find a way to remain in agriculture.
Right. And Mayor, so the county looks like they're going to be starting relatively soon. The advancement of the busway, the bus
rapid transit.
Right, yes, BRT. All right. How is that going to affect a Homestead?
Well, very soon, as in next Friday, I received an email last night from Mayor Levine Cava inviting us to the ceremonial groundbreaking next Friday morning at the at Avocado Drive and the US1 location. You know, it's an interesting question, and Julio and I were talking before we went on the air. We don't know the long-term implications of the pandemic with commuting patterns and the demand and the ever-increasing demand for transit. I mean, certainly, if you need to go to points north from Homestead, whether it be Kendall, Coral Gables, or downtown Miami, BRT will be a more appealing and faster means to get there if you choose not to drive and try to find a really expensive parking place downtown. But
it'll act like a train, walk like a train,
but it's a bus.
Sound like a train, but it's a bus.
It's a bus. But let's remember, in terms of agritourism and venues and the development of downtown Homestead, that busway runs in two directions.
Right.
And, you know, from the south end of that track, I want to stop thinking about moving people north, and I want to focus on creating an environment in Deep South Dade and Homestead to bring those folks south to see what we have to offer.
Right.
You know, if in the future in downtown Homestead, and perhaps have a means to get out into the agricultural areas by using that southerly bus lane.
So one of the things that'll attract
doesn't seem to be a really supportive in this big panacea that so many of us look, oh, great, there's going to be this roadway down there. I certainly question for the $300 million, $100 million locally in the state and the feds, what impact it's going to have in the next 10 years. I understand that you have to have something, you have to start somewhere. But you're certainly implying, will there be job opportunities down south so you can bring people in there? So what does it look like, the businessman here and the mayor, for job opportunities?
Well, you know, and I believe that part of our transit problems, our congestion problems, are the severe lack of jobs in our region, Homestead, and, you know, going up through probably Palmetto Bay.
Right.
And our focus, and my continued focus, is going to be trying to attract jobs to our area so that our residents don't have to get on the BRT and hop on the Metro Rail or sit for 2 hours or more a day on the Turnpike or on US1, that we're going to create local jobs.
So traditionally, most people will get up at 6 a.m, you know, and if you're 6 a.m, you're already late. If you're getting at least to Miami, to downtown Miami, you got to get up at 5:30, and then you jump on the Turnpike, and it's already, before you get to Cutler Bay, it's already, you know, you're already stopped bumper to bumper until you get through some of those curves. So having the thought of creating more jobs down south, good paying jobs, not just any jobs.
That's right.
We mean good paying jobs, so that people no longer have to drive to Miami or have to look for a way. Because even when they try to encourage carpooling, it never happened. So Amazon has, you know, they are going to build 2 distribution centers, which is going to create, from what I've read, over 400 jobs. How does the city continue to attract those types of big businesses down south? That's a question that I always, struggle with. How do you attract those businesses?
Well, unfortunately, and I guess fortunately, by default, we are the last frontier.
Right.
And, Amazon came here because of proximity, reasonable proximity to the airport,
right,
to the turnpike, and the availability of land.
Right.
And I've had inquiries from people who have been in the heavy commercial industrial development business in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area for nearly 50 years.
Mm-hmm.
They first approached me in January. They were looking for 100 acres and talking about doing upwards of 1 million square feet of space.
Okay.
Serious number of jobs.
Right.
Okay. He wants out of the Northeast.
Right.
Conversation we had in January was, I'm looking from Stewart all the way to, the
right before the Keys,
top of the 18-mile stretch. And I'm thinking, well, we're kind of out of that loop. Well, a few weeks ago, these guys contacted me. We want to come again, and look in more detail at some of these sites that we were made aware of. So, I think we're on the edge of, and look, let's face it, Amazon creates interest.
Right.
When Amazon landed in Homestead, others start to take notice, and there will be, a ripple effect from Amazon.
Correct.
But there's also the pandemic effect that folks are looking to Florida as very business friendly to come do what they've been doing successfully elsewhere. And, people I've talked to talking about did a similar project, I think somewhere outside of Newark, New Jersey, and claimed to create 1,000 jobs of a wide range of pay scale diversity.
And there is some controversy also where, the Homestead Air Reserve Base, there's talks for many years about a joint use agreement and more cargo, which, looking at it from the outside, you would think that could potentially create more jobs as those companies look to establish headquarters or to do something down there. But there's a lot of controversy behind that.
And back to, if you don't mind, the point about these big companies, big brand names. I'm sure we're familiar with them. I'm trying to get them to tell us, right? That when they come to a place where there's not a lot of infrastructure, they have to do, if they want 100 acres, they have to go where the neighborhoods have to follow that, because it's unlikely that they were going to be built prior to that. Like Walmart, they build out way 10 years ahead of time. So when these big companies say, I want 50 acres or 100 acres, do they look around and go, all right, what services are available to the 1,000 people or the 400 people that are there? And then your answer to them is what?
Well, specifically, the people that have made inquiries in the last 6 months are looking at proximity to the turnpike and a fairly, a main road, 4-lane roadway, fairly direct from the turnpike to the particular site, that would tend not to draw scrutiny from the existing residential. You're going to kind of skirt residential to have that heavy truck traffic to and from that site.
And you brought up about the airport. So do these people say, hey, listen, if we had a local airport, doesn't have to be like Miami International, you have the Greater Executive, I think that's the name, or Tamiami, and you have the Homestead. Do people talk to you about that?
They haven't yet. The folks that have made inquiries at the city have not, because their model, certainly in the Northeast, is that if a truck can leave our facility or leave the airport and be at one end or the other in an hour or so, that is sufficient. Now, it's interesting, and of course, you were there. I was around in the post-Andrew battle over the reuse of the airbase. And of course, the potential very limited joint use is apparently in discussion again. And what we have are very, very vocal and active environmental groups that are drawing the hard line, that if we allow that, it's going to morph into a cargo airport. It'll
just escalate.
Yeah.
You'll open the door to Pandora's box, and then before you know it, it's a full commercial airport.
And my answer to that is that thinking seems to be back in the days of a DC-3 or a Constellation barely getting off the runway with a load of cargo we have, very quiet and efficient cargo jets now.
Right.
And I'm old enough to remember, and so are you, that during the height of the Vietnam War, B-52s were stationed at Homestead Air Force Base. Birds didn't fall from the sky. Fish didn't go belly up in the bay with that kind of activity.
Right.
So, you've got that extremism of just no.
Yeah.
And look, if we are going to work under this philosophy that we need to have a house for everyone who wants to move here.
Right.
And I don't necessarily ascribe to that, so take off your realtor hat and just shake your head yes for a minute.
That's what we do. We sell houses.
You got to have jobs for those folks. Yeah. And that's going to be a component of regional prosperity.
So how do we balance it? You're in business, you're in the government business, and to build. How do you balance the desires of the homeowner and the desire of the business community and find that balance?
The homeowner looks for amenities and looks for jobs and looks for great schools and looks for, park space. People, that's what a homeowner wants. For example, personally, I don't want to have to drive to Miami to go have some sort of entertainment, to go eat at a nice restaurant, to go to a nice park for my kids to go to good schools.
When you say Miami, what do you mean?
I think anything north of Kendall.
Okay.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Anything north of Kendall.
And I agree with that. For those of us who have always lived in Homestead, Miami is anything, you're right. Anything north of Kendall is Miami.
And that's a common term. I know some folks that live in Homestead, Miami. It's like Miami. Or so I'm thinking Broward County down to some other point. I don't know.
Or some still say Miami.
So the real estate market, as you all may be aware, is smoking hot right now. It is extremely elevated prices. And there is very little inventory. And like you had mentioned before, Deep South Dade, Cutler Bay, Homestead, Florida City, we are the last frontier. So you've got all of the developers just wanting to get in there and build as much as they can, given the fact that money is extremely cheap right now with the interest rates being so low and there's a housing boom going on. So there are plenty of buyers out there, and the developers can't build the houses fast enough.
So, Mayor, you've been involved in politics your entire life. Your dad was involved when we were kids. All right. When homeowners, a long-term resident, goes to speak at a public meeting about a development, what is it they typically say about it in Homestead?
Too close together, too many of them, and alluding to traffic issues. Now, and look, admittedly, when we had our first boom starting in 2001, 2002, old Homestead, west of US1, that stuff out on the east side was so remote, it was never going,
Right. But that's my Homestead.
Yeah.
West.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's where Julio lives.
Yeah.
It was short-sighted into thinking this will never impact us. And those of us who have been around for a long time, who have lost all of our shortcuts, can't get anywhere quickly anymore, we finally have that spillover effect. But frankly, I think the concern is that let's not kid ourselves. The margins for a developer are typically found in townhouse development. And for myself, and I think for many others, our concern is that our community is out of balance in terms of a diversity of housing types. I mean, I've had developers tell me, literally, it's just Homestead. We can't do anything better than that, and still refuse to do that. Yet 1 block north of our city limits, houses on lots of 15,000 square feet to a half acre or so are selling for $700,000 or $800,000. Really nice single family homes. So don't spread the fiction to me that we can't do that in the city. And I really think that's the issue we have is we're weighted too heavily on the fast buck type of housing.
Now, even townhouse development, from my conversations with developers, the lumber costs are soaring through the roof. I mean, just at an astronomical rate, and also other supplies, other building materials are going through the roof.
Everything.
So they're starting to increase their prices and pass that on to the consumer so that they can still make their margins. However, I think what you're alluding to is just like the smart plan in terms of transit, you're thinking smart development to balance out and not be top heavy on one style of properties, which makes sense.
So I understand when the new houses cost more to build, that puts a higher value on the other homes, right? So the people that are selling their homes, hey, we could get another X dollars for that. This is a really good time to sell. So we hope that there's a balance coming out in the next 6 months or so.
Yeah.
We hope, because in spite of what I hear out of Washington, I think inflation is
on the way.
It's there, right? I might add the McDonald's down the street. Tommy, do I have this right? They have a sign that says they're not going to be open on Sunday.
They're not open on Sunday.
They're not open on Sunday.
Staffing issues?
Staffing. All right. So that is a challenge for all small businesses about how to get people. I see that the state is now, at the end of June, going to cut off that other $300 a week that people are getting. I think that will have an effect. We hope that people want to go back to work. By the way, we're looking for some folks over here. Call us, all right?
I did want to ask this last question. Mayors, I think mayors a lot of times get together, and you may have noticed that Mayor Suarez has made a big push. We're trying to attract tech companies to come to Miami, and he's been successful because there's a lot of talk I see on Twitter and social media. I think the Redlands and the agricultural industry are ripe to take advantage of some of that tech. Do you see yourself sometimes having an opportunity to reach out to some other mayors so that collectively, everyone can kind of piggyback off of each other that would be in the best interest for their municipality?
Well, we have that. There was a South Dade Mayors Coalition formed at about the time I was elected, among Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay, Homestead, and Florida City.
Okay.
Because it seemed like, the commission could pretty much impose what it felt, because
The county commission.
we weren't speaking with a united voice on behalf of
Deep South
Dade. But, even further than that, we have our little sub-coalition, but the League of Cities created a county-wide coalition so that we spoke with one voice.
Okay.
So that rather than speaking to the commissioner from the district where an impacted municipality was located, all municipalities were speaking, and made it more difficult for those other commissioners to ignore and vote against the interest of the directly impacted municipality.
Right.
But as for tech, Mayor Suarez may be getting all the publicity, creating all the publicity for himself, and
So that's Mayor Francis Suarez,
Yes.
City of Miami Mayor.
Yes, City of Miami Mayor Suarez. You may have heard some rumblings, but tech people are seeking out Homestead and have made inquiries in Homestead.
Elaborate on that, please.
Well, to the extent that I can, I will. Some tech uses are very power consumptive.
Correct.
I'll give you an example. Our biggest customer in Homestead, for Homestead Utilities right now, consumes 2 megawatts. Okay.
Okay.
This potential tech use would consume 10 megawatts.
Wow.
5 times, and it probably wouldn't be hard for you to guess what our biggest consumer is.
I would assume they're in the mining business.
Well, now I'm talking about our current consumer.
I would make Baptist Hospital?
Probably Baptist Hospital. So our municipal power rates, which are the second lowest in the state of Florida, are becoming very attractive to these array.
We're the second lowest in the state of Florida?
We are. Remember, we had a council
That's right.
meeting a couple weeks ago where we
Second
reallocated that charge. So we're the second lowest in the state of Florida, lower than FPL. That's always been our benchmark. this much higher than FPL. Now we are a hair lower than FPL for the same amount of electricity. So that is very attractive to many of the facets of the tech world, and inquiries are being made to the city of Homestead now. And again, we talked about the ripple effect that Amazon has. Once one of these tech guys lands in Homestead and announces we're here, everybody, and for example, a lot of that mining stuff is moving out of China now.
Got it.
They're coming to the United States. And, you know, we're part of Greater Miami.
Right.
Like it or not, we're lumped in with Miami. So, you know, he may have lit the fuse, but we're going to get the impact in Homestead.
So besides a lot of property,
mm-hmm.
inexpensive electricity, it is a gateway to the Florida Keys. So come on down, guys.
Come on down. Come on down. Michael, I want to thank you for having us.
Our pleasure.
Having us today, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being on the show. A big shout out to the South Dade Chamber and all of its members and everyone who lives in South Dade. If you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the chamber, please go onto our website, southdadechamberofcommerce.org. We'll be happy to assist you. And again, thank you guys. Thank you, Tommy, for everything you do for us as well. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.